there's certain things about corporate America that I started realizing, and it could be very frustrating. You either decide that you're going to play the corporate game and go along with it, or you're going to choose a different path. So it was some of those early things that just made me like, what is another path? And maybe I want to explore that other path versus always fighting for that next promotion.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and hey, thanks for joining me today. I'm here just to pour some positive back into your day with practical tips and stories to encourage and inspire. So let's dive in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and today I'm really excited to welcome Heather Udo to the show. Heather's founder and CEO of Shoppable, which is an award-winning platform that's changing the way all of us shop online. And with a background in digital innovation, multiple tech patents to her name, Heather is just no stranger to success in the realm of e-commerce. I'm just really excited to find out some of her insights today and hear what she has to share. So, Heather, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Heather, I don't know, maybe we could just back up a little bit before Shoppable and all the innovation and the success that now you're known for. How was the person that you were then being shaped? Kind of what experiences or things in your background gave you the tools to become the person you are now?
Yeah. So I think so much of our own experiences really does shape where you end up going. And part of it is like you often have this kind of fork in the road path. And sometimes you don't realize how big certain decisions are that you're making and how it will impact you later. But it's easier looking back and thinking, oh, okay, so these are some of the things that were really impactful. So on my journey, I think some of it started really young in the way that my parents really raised me and my siblings, and that they made sure that we understood the value of hard work and understood the value of a dollar too. We grew up on like a hobby farm. So there were endless chores, cleaning horse stalls and all kinds of things. And um, throwing hay bales. We did all of the hard manual stuff too. But not only that, we were paid like a dollar allowance at the end of the week or something. And as we got older, of course, you want to go see the movies. You want to like meet your friends at the mall for something. And what my parents said is if the movies cost, I think at the time, $6, $7 or something. So you either have to save up for a certain number of weeks or you have to find some other way to make the difference up. So that kind of put me in this entrepreneurial mindset, I think, from an early age, because I was like, okay, so how do I create like a mini business, and essentially a business is just when you have something you're offering and someone's willing to pay for it. You have your first customer that's a business. So I was coming up with these various creative ideas, including creating a club. I think I was probably 10 or something, but I created a club and people paid dues to join. And we used the dues to buy candy and we sold the candy to the kids that weren't in the club. And like these little things that we were doing early on. So I think part of that structure was kind of early, kind of trained into my mindset. And then other things that happened were things that, I think many listeners can probably relate to too, is that when you're working a job, whether it's a 9 to 5 or a part-time job, there are these kind of corporate ceilings of different types that you can run into. And you don't have complete control as an employee. So the first kind of corporate ceiling that I ran into was I believe, 16 or 17. I'd been working in retail for a couple of years. And my boss, the store manager, wanted to make me the assistant manager. And corporate declined it. And they said only because she didn't have her high school degree yet, because I was still in high school. And my store manager said, you're already doing everything. You're like counting the funds, you're dropping the money off at the bank at the end of the night. You're doing everything but turning the key. So, she's like, it's ridiculous, but it's corporate policy, And so I ran into that. And then I ran into it again at a different store that I worked at during college. And it was things like that that are really frustrating, where you realize, okay, I can keep going down this path, but I see where it goes. And I'm someone that's very ambitious. I'm someone who's going to work my butt off And I want to make sure that I'm paid properly and that I'm reaping the rewards, whether it's that promotion or whatever it is, or it's, hey, I've built a business and I have equity in this now, like the sweat equity of it too. So it was some of those early things that just made me like, what is another path? And maybe I want to explore that other path versus like always fighting for that next promotion and trying to justify. I'm already doing the work, I'm just not getting paid.
Exactly. That is one of the most frustrating things I think about being in a corporate environment where you are part of the system is
Yes,
they try to level the playing field and make it like you must have this degree, you must have these credentials, even though you may have the experience that checks all those boxes. And I think
exactly.
it's actually a disservice for the people resources that we have out there because there are people doing amazing things and not getting the opportunities because there's not a box checked. And unfortunately, I
Exactly.
think that elevates the credentials higher than the execution. So now we have people with all these letters behind their name that really don't know how to execute anything, but they got the letters behind their name, so they're able to check the box.
Yeah, I like how you put that. It's like the yeah, with the credentials over the execution, because that's exactly right. And that's kind of what there's certain things I think about corporate America that I started realizing, and it could be very frustrating. And it's you either decide that you're gonna play the corporate game and go along with it and handle it the way that those types of businesses operate, or you're gonna choose a different path.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm really curious because your path has had so many really cool successes, actually. And we should probably pause there and actually talk through some of those because I bet a lot of people aren't even aware of some of the things that you've done with the tech patents and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about what those successes are. But I would like to get to how you got launched into that because obviously you've always kind of had a little bit of an entrepreneurial thread in your DNA. But I'd like to understand kind of what opportunities set you up to open the door to creating your own business. So first, let's talk about what are those successes that you've had?
Yeah, so I started Shoppable, my software business, about 14 years ago. And fast forwarding to now, some of the successes that we've seen, first and foremost, are we were able to secure the Wall Street Journal as our first launch partner. So before we'd even gone live, I had worked my way into a room with them. Great, incredible team, and they were like, "We want to use this technology." So they were Shoppable's launch partner. We launched a Shoppable gift guide back in December 2012, I think it was. So that was our first launch partner. And then another big kind of success along the way, we were nominated for an award that L'Oreal does every year. It's a L'Oreal Women in Digital Innovation Award. And we were nominated for it. And I was one of the winners the year that we were nominated. And that came with a paid pilot. So that also allowed us to start working with L'Oreal. And then I was asked to speak on stage at Scott Galloway's conference, which was L2 at the time. So I got to speak on stage, and as soon as I was off stage, I had emails and people stopping me saying, wait a minute, you have built this holy grail for what they were looking for and didn't even realize it existed." So that kind of spun us into a whole slew of Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies, many of the world's largest brands and advertisers were then like, wait a minute, we need to be using this technology. So I would say those are some of the other big successes. And then we were a two-time Webby honoree as well for that award.
Wonderful. Well, goodness sakes. Congratulations on all of those things and all the things that I know that you haven't even mentioned. You have a whole list of things as well. But I've been in technology for quite some time. Most of my career was focused around technology. And I know creating a technology or the software
Yeah.
that is the basis of the tool is not necessarily an easy thing. How did that start?
So I started the software piece of it. Um, I'm not an engineer. So for anyone that was kind of curious about my background or thinking you have to be a tech person to start a tech company, you absolutely do not. I was working at another startup, but I was not an engineer or anything. I was running business development, sales, account management. It was very early, so I kind of had a big breadth of the business side. But when I was ready to start Shoppable, I figured out how to communicate my ideas, but I pretty much literally put it into a PowerPoint. As a salesperson, that was my go-to format. So I put all my idea into PowerPoint, figured out how to communicate what I wanted this company software to look like and the functionality of it, and then use that to bring it to an engineer to help me kind of figure out the proof of concept and like, is this possible? Because what I wanted to do didn't exist. So I wanted to figure out if it was possible before I went too far down the road on it. But I originally started it with a PowerPoint.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, PowerPoint is kind of the tool of salespeople, PowerPoint or Keynote or
Yeah,
whatever kind of
exactly.
whatever slide deck you want to use. But okay, so just for those who maybe aren't as familiar with the background of Shoppable, what was the concept that was so unique?
The uniqueness is that Shoppable is we embed buy buttons anywhere online, as well as the ability to purchase from within that website. So most people are used to a traditional affiliate experience if you're not on an e-commerce website. So you might be on your favorite blog or a publishing website, or you might be on social media or all these different things. And anything that would normally have to redirect the shopper to bloomingdales.com or to Amazon or to Target and Walmart, Shoppable brings the checkout to that experience so that you can stay on the wallstreetjournal.com, or you can stay on Almay Cosmetics website or whatever it might be and complete that purchase. And then on the back end, Shoppable fulfills the orders through Walmart or Saks Fifth Avenue or Target or whoever the shopper chose. But we have removed about 16 clicks on average from that shopper journey, what they would have gone from, inspiration to actually being able to purchase those products. So
That
we're adding the shoppable experience.
that's amazing. And 16 clicks. It doesn't sound like a lot for that little finger to click 16 times, but as a shopper, the more clicks it is, the less likely we are to do it. So that's a
Yeah.
huge savings. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because every single time someone clicks, you get drop off, and your conversion, meaning the number of people that are proceeding down that path, declines. So all these brands and retailers are always trying to optimize what they call the path to purchase. And how do we remove clicks and remove frictions? I mean, that's why Amazon had the one click buy now button that they had a patent on that for a while from retailers.
Hmm.
But yeah, pretty interesting.
That's fantastic. So next time we all click those buttons, we'll understand we can thank Shoppable for some of that background stuff that's happening. Well, I'm curious, you had mentioned a couple of blockers that you ran into as you were trying to build your business. Certainly the checking of the boxes in the corporate world for sure. What other kind of things got in your way as you were trying to build this business?
So many things. I would say at the earlier stages, some of it is, when you have something new and novel, you have to expect pushback, right? At some level. I would say it was more than I could have expected. To start, I thought it was going to be easy to go out and raise venture capital. That's what it seemed like at the time. I'm based in New York now, but at the time I'd been out in San Francisco, and people talk like it's very easy. So I thought it was going to be much easier to raise venture capital. I got not just a lot of no's, but I got people that questioned whether or not e-commerce was going to be a thing.
Oh,
So I found myself, I'm like, do I need to spend part of my pitch pitching just e-commerce? And then there were people that they kept kind of underestimating the idea and the concept. And like, I just don't think this is big enough. I'm like, making the entire internet shoppable, and then your TV and your phone and any other device that's invented in the future, like, seems pretty big, but they would keep kind of putting these, like, blinders on and trying to make it smaller, like, "Oh, but okay, is it just fashion?" Or something like, "No, it's not just fashion." So there were all these, like, little things like that that was very frustrating, and I just had to try to take it with a grain of salt and like, "Okay, not the right fit," and move on. And then I ended up feeling like this business needs to be in New York because I had to get brands and retailers bought in on the idea so that I had the products to pull into my checkout to make these bet buy buttons exist. Because in theory, I didn't have anything as a business if I just had a publisher or a website willing to embed the buttons if there were no products to sell.
right.
So I ended up coming out to New York on a business trip and was able to, through just basically brute force of being persistent and not taking no for an answer, secure beings with I think it was Bloomingdale's and Saks Fifth Avenue and Ralph Lauren. I think it was those 3. But they really wanted to meet in person and kind of build a relationship. So I flew here, had those meetings, and after, all this back and forth, get them to agree to be a test partner in the early days. But it was so much work to push through that because every time I emailed a retailer and tried to get someone to talk to me, they'd say, "Oh, we don't work that way." Or they'd say, first they'd say, "Tell me a little bit more about how it works and what your business is before we would waste time getting on a call with you." And then I'd explain it, they, "Yeah, we don't do that." I said, "I know, it hasn't existed before." So I had to then think about how do I sell to the individual first and get their buy-in so that I can kind of get them to take off the corporate hat of like, "We don't operate that way." How do I take a different approach? And because I don't take no for an answer. So I was like, I'm gonna get them to take off the corporate hat and then I'm going to sell to the individual and say, wouldn't it be great if this new way of shopping existed where you discover something really cool on whatever website you're on? You're trying to redecorate your house or you moved into a new house and you're looking for inspiration on living rooms or bedrooms or whatever. And like, what if everything was shoppable? What if you could just click on something and see who sold it, how much it was, where you could buy it, or you could buy it now, see how fast it could be delivered to you, all of that information. They're like, wow, that sounds really cool. So I sold to the individual first, but now I had to get them back to the corporate hat again. That's where like commerce is going. And businesses don't want to be left behind. So we need to make sure that they're not left behind. So then I kind of switched it back to them. But it was a educational process to kind of take people through it and get those first yeses, and I think it's important to share that stuff because I always try to make sure that as an entrepreneur at this stage, that when I'm telling my story and the journey, that I don't just glaze over those things like, "Oh, yeah, we had a great launch partner. We had great retailers signed up," because it wasn't like it wasn't an obvious, "Yeah, let's give it a try," kind of thing. You have to expect pushback and then just figure out what's another way, what's another approach that I can take to get through this challenge. So I want people to, like, keep that in mind because that's how you have to do it.
Absolutely. When you had such a strong confidence in the offering that you were bringing to the table, that obviously over time that helped to sell the actual idea. But I love that you went after what was needed, not what
Yeah.
was. There's entrepreneurs out there who are trying to what is needed in the marketplace. But I love that your way of thinking was looking at no, what isn't there that really needs to be there? Where's the gap? And I
Mm,
think that's a really innovative way of looking at problems that are out there in the world. But it's also interesting to me that you ran into the same problem you ran into when you were 16. They had a box to check and you weren't coming in to check the box.
yeah.
So it's almost like you've been trained for that moment since you were a young girl anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny you say that because it is true. It's funny because now our clients and our partners are some of the biggest companies in the world. Yesterday I was talking to the president of this publicly traded company. I'm just like, pinch me, like, how am I talking to this person and having this conversation? But it is kind of funny and a little bit full circle. And I do think that it is helpful to learn and understand how these companies actually do work and how they operate, not how we want them to. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that can be frustrating on the outside or even while you're on the inside too. It can be frustrating because if you want to push against it or the right way to do it is different, then you just are kind of creating more friction for yourself. So sometimes you have to kind of put a pin in that and think about how do I accomplish what I want, understanding how they're going to behave and what they need and how they're going to approach something. Even if you disagree with like think there's a better way for them to do this. Like you can't solve everybody's problems and you can't force a big company to completely move or change their ships. So you've got to understand how they operate, and they're operating probably for their own reasons, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the objection that they bring to the table isn't always a no. I think we have a tendency at first to hear that as a no, but it's really not a no. It's just either a not yet or
Mhm.
it's a I need more information. So
Yeah.
something for us all to keep in mind as we're trying to sell our businesses or our services or whatever it is we're doing out there. So,
Yeah, and I think the other point to add on to that is sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's also not the right person. So sometimes, especially these large corporations, they might have 30,000 employees or something. I've ran into some people in my career that are like, this guy, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just get a bad vibe from him. He doesn't like me. He is a no, 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 no. And he's just trying to approach everything negatively. And I just have to realize, okay, I'm gonna keep trying because I don't give up, but maybe he's not the guy to go through to figure out the relationship with that business. So there's a lot of other people, and he's not gonna be there forever, most likely. Um, so then sometimes you think through, okay, how do I find a different person at one of these businesses and try a different approach?
Mhm.
Because when you truly know and believe like what I'm doing and what I'm bringing to the table makes sense and it's going to help this business, then you also believe then that person's making a mistake by trying to block this from happening. So I'm going to go with what I truly believe and find another person and try to pitch it through and help show them how I'm going to be able to help their business. And that's been, not always successful. Sometimes people will come back and say, well, ultimately he's the decision maker. But in other cases, they're like, you know what? This is his space within the larger corporation, but we've got this other space over here, and I think it's a really good match for this.
Mhm.
So you just want to always find your own path, and sometimes it's find an alternative path and just how do I carve other ways to get to the end goal versus the first way that you attempted.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I love that. I think when we're working to try to get our products out there or our services out there, we have to realize that it takes some time for the people we're working with to understand what it is that we're offering. And I love that you changed your approach. So
Mhm.
sometimes we have to change how we're selling it or how we're saying it because it's not resonating with them. We all have different communication styles, and sometimes we need to shift how we're presenting the information so someone can receive it. But I'm curious also within the realm, because there's a lot of stuff that went into building all of this. Did you ever find yourself approaching burnout, kind of pushing yourself too hard? How did you keep that under control?
Yeah, I for sure I went through that. I would say my approach is in the earlier days I was not so good at it, but I did start to burn out. I'm like, I have to find things that work for me. So part of it is having a good routine so that you have some structure to your day. And part of it is getting enough sleep, making sure that you try to get in a workout at least a certain number of times a week, and then feed your mind with content that is going to help you grow and sometimes help you think differently. Because part of it is with businesses of all stages, part of what you have to accept is that there will always be some type of problem. It will just change. So you have to learn to be able to deal with them and to deal with stress. And that gets better over time, I think, as an entrepreneur, because at the beginning, it feels like I remember even at the startup I worked at before I started Shoppable, we had this huge problem. It was a lead generation company. And we came to work on a Monday morning and saw all these fraudulent leads had been sent over the weekend. And through our automated process, we had sent them right on to all of our clients. And I looked at that and I thought, like, the company is toast. Like, that's it. We had all these big clients and I was doing the sales. So I had all the client relationships. And I was just thinking, I don't even know how to explain this to them. And they're probably never going to give us another dime. Like, I just thought worst case scenario. And then we're not going to have any money. And then the company's going to shut down and we're not going to have jobs. And then our CEO brought the leadership into a conference room. And then we just focused on the solution. And he said, here's the problem. How do we fix it? And that taught me so much because you could dwell on the problem like I was. I was like spiraling in my head, like, this is the worst possible thing that could happen. And I was going in that direction. And he sat there and focused on the solution. Cool, calm, collected, was just like, okay, what are ways we can fix this? And then, okay, we've got an action plan. Everybody break. And then we all went on and started attacking it. And it was no problem. And not only was it no problem, when we exited and sold that business, that fraud prevention system that we had built coming out of that room ended up being one of the number one reasons why that company was acquired. So it was such a learning experience for me that I have brought into Shoppable that has really helped me deal with problems and stress and things. I see it on my team's face. Occasionally, we'll have a challenge and they'll say, like, "Oh my gosh, you seem like you're so calm about this, but I'm really concerned. Like, this is, whatever." And I'm like, "There's a way through it, whatever. It was an accident. Someone made a mistake, things happen." And let's focus on the solution. So that has really helped me a lot by trying to stay really focused on that. And then I would say the other piece, and I certainly have had these moments throughout Shoppable too, it feels like the stress or whatever is too much, then I will basically take a mental health day. I'll just say, you know what? I need a day to sit and do whatever that is not business. It is not work. It frees up my mind, and sometimes those days are also days that you just kind of feel like you need to separate yourself to find that path forward, because when you're so in the weeds and so into those details that sometimes it's hard to see what are the solutions. So it can help to take that day and just step back from it for a minute and go do something completely unrelated to work, like go for a hike, go horseback riding, I don't know, go wherever, go out for, wine tasting with your friends, whatever it might be, but just separate yourself.
Yeah, so you can free up your brain for the solutions that you're looking for. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It,
Exactly.
I think it's almost comical the way human beings are so prone to be, oh my goodness, the sky is falling kind of reaction to most
Yeah.
things. And I really appreciate the fact that you had a leader in your organization at that time who modeled what calm, collected,
Hmm.
solution focused thinking looks like, because you can then emulate that. And in my career as well, I've seen that clients appreciate more how you handle a mistake
Yes.
more than they dwell on the mistake itself. So, yes, mistakes happen. We are human, and no, the sky's not falling. There are certain mistakes that will kill your business, but in general, if you handle them and find the solution, and if clients know that you are addressing the problem, they're
Yes.
much more likely to be at peace as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We do spiral. That's a good visual for it as well, because we start kind of like, oh no, this is going to happen. And then that's going to happen. And then we just kind of spin ourselves into a ball of stress. So
Exactly. And like most times, none of those things are going to happen, let alone all of them. Right. So,
exactly.
and actually on that note, if I can just add too, that part of the thought process that I took myself through, because when I quit my corporate job, because the last startup I had been at, I mentioned we exited. So I stayed at that larger corporation for 2 years post acquisition before starting Shoppable. And part of the thought process that I had to think through is, I was going to quit my good paying corporate job to go make nothing and try to start a business and try to hopefully be able to eventually pay myself. But in the meantime, I was going to be digging out of my savings and using my savings to live. And I was just like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And how would I handle that? And then playing through that worst case scenario actually gave me peace, because it was like, the worst case scenario is this doesn't work. I waste some of my savings or all of it. and and then I go and get another job. And if I can't have my rent or whatever, I'll go crash on somebody else's couch. But it's not that bad. Then you go apply for another job, you work in corporate America again, and it's not a big deal.
Hmm.
Like the worst case wasn't as bad as everybody's gonna hate me, I'm gonna have no friends and no money, I'm gonna be out on the street and like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes playing through the worst case before making a decision when you're in control, that can help give you peace of mind to go through and take a leap that you want to, or take a risk that you want to.
Yeah, that is fantastic advice. Kind of preparing your brain for that worst case scenario, knowing that anything that's less than the worst case scenario is going to be something you can definitely adjust to. So,
Exactly.
I did have one other area I'd like to tiptoe into if we could, because I know that you have a family, and I'm really
Yes.
curious about how all of this business building and the success and the stress and all of the things that are part of that scenario, how did that play into your family life?
Mm. So Yeah, it's played into it. So when I first started Shoppable, I was single. Yeah, so I've kind of gone through it with my family. So I had Shoppable when I met my husband, and now we have 2 kids. They're 6 and 7. So, yeah, we're in a different place, but I would say, I mean, it does play a role, and I think this is true even when you're not an entrepreneur, but once you have these other responsibilities, and not just like there are responsibilities, but you also want to spend time, obviously, with your family and things. It makes you be so much more efficient with your day and your time. So I know since the moment I was pregnant with my son, who's my first child, and I would get so tired when I was pregnant. Oh my gosh, I was like felt like I was falling asleep at my desk, like, just during a normal work day. So I just knew when I'm on, I have to be so much more effective and efficient with what I'm doing. And so I would say that's one of the things how it affected it. But also my kids they see everything, and my daughter, who's just turning 6 in about a week, she's imitating me. She hears me talk on social media and record videos, and she sees mom's company doing this and that, so she imitates. She's like, "Hi, I'm Heather Udo. I'm the founder and CEO of Shoppable," and she pretends she sits at my desk and pretends to do these things. So it is, I think it's good for them to see what I'm doing and what I'm building, but I also know that it affects them because it does take away some attention from them too. So I try to be really careful when they're like, "Okay, I want to do whatever with you," that I put away my phone and try to separate myself so that they do have that undivided attention, because I work remote now. We closed our office during COVID, so I'm mostly remote, and a lot of times during the day, work has to be the priority. So they might be back from school, and I have a block in my time where I have some time to get them off the bus and spend some time with them. But then I go back and I have more meetings. So I know they kind of want more during that time. But it's something I don't want to use I hesitate. I'm trying not to use the word balance, but I think it is good for them to see me work, see what I'm doing, and kind of their understanding aspects of a business, which is very interesting at a young age. But I think it's good for them to learn too and see what goes into it.
Well, you are giving them some tips and tools and lessons, much like your parents gave you when you were out at the farm. So that's one thing. The other thing is they're learning that mom and dad have to set boundaries. And this kind of takes us all the way back full circle to that structure you were talking about to keep our days from getting out of control and overwhelming. And I think we can serve as models. You're serving as a wonderful role model for your kids of how to be successful, but also how to be a good parent. And that's how we learn. It's just goes right back to that conference room with your leader who came in with a very calm demeanor when something was spiraling crazy. And
Yeah.
you learned from them how to mimic that in future situations. So I think you are modeling wonderful behavior for those young ones that are going to be future leaders of our country.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk real quick about where people can find you and how they can learn more about your offerings.
Yeah, so the best place to find me, I'm at HeatherUdo.com. It's my website, where that's primarily the way to reach out to me for any entrepreneurs that want help with their business. And then shoppable.com for anything shoppable related. But I'm probably most active on Instagram, which is at HeatherUdo1. So HeatherUdo1.
Wonderful. Fantastic. I'll put those links in the show notes for sure. And, I often ask this question before we wrap up, but you've done so many different things, Heather, and you are such an inspiration in so many different ways for young women, for entrepreneurs, for moms, for businesses in so many different ways. Do you have any kind of parting words or words of encouragement you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to share is there's this image where you see a miner mining for diamonds, and he's been digging and digging and digging and digging and trying to get to that payoff. He's trying to get to the goal. And one of the miners turns around right before he got to the diamonds. So there's like a little sliver left of dirt to go through before he gets to the diamond. So I just love this picture, if you can kind of picture it, because it shows like you never know how close you are to your goal and to the outcome that you want. And you often have to dig through a lot of dirt and hard work to get there. So don't give up. I just want to encourage people to keep going, because you don't know how close you are to the diamonds.
That's wonderful advice. Heather, thank you so much for your wisdom and just being with us today. I so appreciate your time.
course. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
There's so many things about Heather's story that are so inspiring to me, but I have 9 beautiful takeaways for you today. Number 1, pivotal moments are not always planned. Sometimes the most pivotal moments in our lives don't look that big in the moment. They show up in the childhood lessons we learned about doing our chores or saving money for the movies or turning that $1 allowance into something much more. Heather learned early on that if you want something, you either have to wait for it or you figure out a way to make it happen. And that mentality she had shaped everything that came later in her life. Heather's early entrepreneurism showed her that value creation starts with identifying a need or a want and then figuring out how to do something about it. Number 2, don't let that check the box requirement stop you. There is something deeply frustrating about doing the work and showing the results and being fully capable to hold a title and still being told no because you don't have the right box checked. Corporate systems usually prioritize credentials over capabilities, and I think it kind of makes sense because it allows them to manage people from a distance. But here's the thing, when you realize the parameters of the corporate game, you then have a choice. Either keep playing by someone else's rules and figure out how to climb where you want to go, or build something of your own. And for Heather, that frustration she felt was just fuel for the fire and a reminder that ambition alone isn't always enough if you're stuck in a system that can't see past the policy. Heather reminds us, don't let that check the box stop you. Find a way. You can do this. Number 3, you don't have to be able to do it all, to have it all. But you do need a solid way to communicate where you need help. Heather was a business development professional who started a software business. She wasn't an engineer, and she didn't need to be. She was someone with an idea and a lot of drive, and a simple PowerPoint deck that communicated the vision she had. The beauty of entrepreneurship is that clarity and conviction can carry you further than your individual skills or credentials. Heather and her team at Shoppable landed some amazing launch partners, and not because they had all the bells and whistles, but because the concept they had made sense and would allow these companies to launch into the future of e-commerce in a new and strategic way. You don't need to have all the answers and all the skills to begin. You just need to know where you're going and be willing to figure it out along the way. Number 4, see the need that no one else has, but clearly will have. Many startups focus on solving a problem, which is great, but Heather saw the future opportunity of a new and innovative way to do business that no one was doing yet. She solved a problem before anyone realized they had it. Predicting the future isn't as hard as it might seem, but it's definitely something we don't often give enough time and energy to. While we can't read the future with 100% accuracy, we certainly can anticipate future needs that people and businesses will have, just by playing out the current reality in our minds and anticipating where things might go. Give yourself a little time in your planning sessions to consider what might be needed that isn't yet clearly visible. And when you can fine-tune that skill, you will become an indispensable partner for your client's success. Number 5, success and strength is forged by enduring those obstacles and all that pushback. Starting something new, especially something that doesn't yet exist, or something that requires people to think in a new way, well, that means you're going to face a lot of no's. Remember, a no is an easy answer for someone to give because it takes a lot less risk to say no. Saying yes requires someone at a higher level because it means spending money, changing strategy, implementing something new. And while that idea might be the most impactful thing that company could do to improve or grow, our brain's first instinct are going to be to stick with what works. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're early or you're innovative and you're talking maybe to the wrong person. Rejection is often redirection in disguise. So hold on to those convictions tightly enough to outlast the disbelief that others have, and be the kind of business builder who refuses to let "we don't work that way" be the end of the conversation. If you know what you're building or offering has value, don't let somebody else's limited perspective shrink your vision. The obstacles will make you stronger. And my next takeaway is actually related because learning the game is a critical piece of success. So number 6, learning the game. When you're pushing something new into the world, it's not just about vision. It's about learning how the game is played and deciding how you want to navigate it strategically. what things align with who you are and what things don't. Some companies will frustrate you with their slowness or the resistance to try something new or embrace change. But if you take the time to understand why they operate that way, you can better position yourself to work with them and not against them. Again, if you truly believe in what you're bringing to the table, stay persistent, stay curious, and don't be afraid to move on to another client. Go knock on a different door. Number 7, burnout is not a badge of honor. It's a warning sign. Heather helped us see that stepping away, even briefly, can actually accelerate your success. Whether it's taking a mental health day, getting enough sleep, or just moving your body on a regular basis, these small rhythms will help protect your bigger vision. Problems are guaranteed in business, but how you respond to them makes all the difference for your business and for your own personal health and well-being. So, when mistakes happen, not if, but when, remember to stay calm, focus on the solution, and give yourself room to breathe. And if and when needed, just step away. Put your mind on something completely unrelated, because often the clarity we need comes after we've stepped away from all the noise. Number 8, risks and rewards. Quitting a good-paying job to pursue a business is not necessarily glamorous. In fact, it's pretty terrifying. But Heather reminds us to work through that worst-case scenario in your mind. Can you be prepared for that? Run the numbers. Consider the impacts personally and professionally. And if you can handle that worst-case scenario, then you can feel confident to take that leap. Yes, the risks are high, but so are the rewards. And number 9, your family can actually make you become more efficient. There's one thing that we all get the same amount of and can never get more of: time. And when you're building a business or chasing a vision, that limited time you have becomes even more valuable because now you have more things that you want to use your time for. So your decisions need to be more focused, your sense of purpose more defined. But Heather also reminds us that pursuing that business might just allow you to be the role model your family really needs. Our kids are always watching us to see how we react and how hard we work or not. And when they see us working and creating and solving problems, they learn how to apply that to their own lives as well. Maybe not today, but at some point, they will then have the skills needed to be equipped for their own success. Yes, work will take time and energy, and it will take time away from your family, but it also can build something that your kids can watch from and learn from. You could be a real-time role model for courage, grit, and what it means to go after something with your whole heart. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today. Please, if you would share this episode, because you never know what kinds of tips or encouragements might be in our conversation that someone else needs. So pass it along, like it, share it, and subscribe. Together we can flood the world with more encouragement. Until next time, my friends, stay encouraged, be inspired, and I'll see you right back here next time at the Sunshine Cafe.